Hi, look. I know you're dealing with a lot, and I just wish that I could help you somehow. Finding your own place in this mess, it's hard. Maybe I. Maybe. Listen. The other day, after we talked, I remember this quote. A convenient way of getting to know a town is to find out how people work there, how they love, and how they die. I don't know if it helps, but I wrote it anyway.
Words are written to cut across space and time. Listen to them, feel them, how people love, how people work, and die. Written to be read according to their own time. However, time changes, and with it, so do the meanings carried by those words. First, I can't think of town just as a place. No. I have to broaden my gaze and see that it is much more than that. The dawn of the 21st century brought us the world of fast speed, the time of the anxious. It is the time of no timers, the individual rush within the time of individualism. All of this happens within the edges of big cities. In these new times, even a place can lose itself and become a non-place. Hey, you can hear it. Move, move! Time is in a constant state of passing by. It passes through the individual as the individual is passing through life. Time will continue beyond the individual as it has continued beyond the masses of the past. You see, each person has an undetermined and unique frame and history of their own. That is of extreme importance to understand this individualism. We should always keep in mind what the notion of today time means. Rushing and running, it is the mechanics of the today time on the 21st century. From the past into the future, I think we were, are, and will be connected, in one way or another, by a certain number of factors, from cultural heritage to technological evolution, or even the climate. But what seems of the utmost importance is what and how our passage will be within the two absolutes of life, birth and death. On this time, our era, it is worth remembering and not reminiscing. Wake up and remember what is beyond the individual, for it has been forgotten. Know this. There are no absolutes in the age where many are lost. It is important to be awake. Be awake to the richness in this endless place full of people rushing around. And be awake to find time and space to connect these elements in this universe. Oh, such a universe that is being created in front of us. Yes, there is much more in the evolution of life to be explored. Such mission left by our heritage. We have been left with a sense of having something in our hands and not knowing what to do with it next. It is almost hard to imagine us running around without a true objective, but strangely, it happens. Obviously, we cannot assign total responsibility to either past or present. It is a rush hour for everyone. The changes that occur affect us all, even those who are not rushing. Time, in its unpredictability, waits for no single soul. Entropy, a blessed curse of the human nature. And in a time where the individual feels the need of rising above the masses, the result can be dangerous. The past has shown us that the human nature can be perverse. The selfish accumulate of ambitions can detour one's path. The freedom given to the individual without orientation can lead to a disaster, and no freedom at all means no future for humankind. Contemporary modern society, with its inner technocratic structures, has yet failed to accompany and recognize the necessity for adaptation to the idea, and more important, to the mutation and creation happening in front of our eyes. Have you ever seen so much diversity as nowadays? Maybe it is the result of the multiple waves of defiance. Maybe it is the result of placing some of the attachments, and certainly some of the constraints of our heritage, in their modern rightful place. People place their life story within their individual character, different from all the others. Each one of us grants a special place for one-of-a-kind characteristics. We also bring our heritage, which can be divided into different dimensions. Our family heritage, our personal experience, or it can assume a more collective form, like cultural heritage. In its way, it has shared pieces, but also my unique traces of character. It does not matter, heritage or what came behind. What I feel is that, for too many people, the phase where carrying the past is important has passed. Now I can release myself from those constraints easier than others could before, or at least set them aside. To me, it is as if heritage was remodeled, and now it stands not as a prescription, but instead as assistance to the individual. Yet, an assistance that can become so distant that it might be forgotten. It seems that nowadays there is neither time nor place to connect all of these questions. Indeed, we move like in a highway, and before we notice, the landscape has already moved on to the next scene. However, no other time possessed so many means of connecting generations, of preserving the past while looking towards the future. It is here, with this fact in mind, that the role of modern individualism starts reshaping, and surfaces as an answer to the mess of contemporary relativity. But it is necessary to have full conscience of time, for there are moments when we fast discard the importance of the past by seeking what comes ahead. And we might find ourselves in a redundancy of time, wondering and thinking, why should we lose any connections from anyone or anything? As a matter of fact, how about we try to find a new measure of time? The deeper I look, the more I realize. Did not the measure of time already stop to be what it was? What is this place? Is this idea of rushing hour accurate? Where am I? All I feel is a sensation of wind touching my skin, the presence of others running back and forth. What about me? I move myself. I have changed. I transform myself. Either near or far, the other individual, the not me, might not be such a stranger as it once was. The revolution perpetuates itself, remodeling this town that you and I live in now, giving us a new perception of space and distance. It affects us so much that even personal boundaries are broken. So many close to me, so many far from me. Cold connections, as it is said nowadays. But in fact, they are much more complex than they look. Many times they are dimensionally transversal. The idea of no absolute answers, remember? Here it is. The virtual and the physical, symbiotically fused, two different realms, once separated from each other, now living in the constant flux of time, giving to some the comfort that the simple real does not. I can put my mask on, or I can assume a different face. The virtual is no longer cold, and the real is no longer complete. Identities can be lost, and identities can be found. It is a flow of events, each one bursting into a field of new potentialities, new opportunities. Evolution in a universe full of life, a social and human Big Bang. It is all happening in front of my eyes. I can see it now. Indeed, we try to choose what we want our work to be, what we desire to work on. But it is no longer the pursuit, but instead the race for happiness, a race for life, chasing the goals we individually set for ourselves. It is a struggle that might demand too much. One cannot avoid to be fully focused. And yet, how can we not forget others? Suddenly, fulfillment strikes us as a challenge, since we live in the time of the instantaneous, the time of the speed click. As if in a moment of a click, everything might change. My fulfillment is as ephemeral as the today's time. There are always changes both inside and outside, neurotically visions of ourselves in a time of the too much. And suddenly the question of, what do you want to be when you grow up, seems to have gained another importance. On top of that, there is a risk. Sometimes, if not many times, I find so many people whose goals are not compatible with what is required of us. It is a disillusion of youth. Those gifted with youth in this time are living it by searching for their place, their taste of hope. And it happens that they feel that they have seen too much, and indeed they have. The clashing waves of this mixed reality, running so fast at speeds unseen, have shown us so much and left no connections, no explanations, or when they leave some small clues, we might forget to question this semiotic clash and stay shackled to its superficiality. Will you question it, or will you accept it? Superficial piles of information, of knowledge, shouldn't be enough. After all, we are individuals, living our individuality. The gift of freedom is just handed over. The paradigmatic idea of freedom in a place where we crash and clash with either those saying yes or those saying no, and all seem to be living without an instructions manual. What to do with our individuality in the face of the collective? And human life, socially and culturally, requires a great measure of collectiveness. I cannot live without the touch of others, the share of love, the share of life. That life specifically can strike down the individual's aspirations, or the individuals can let down their own aspirations slip. Freedom, it carries the necessities of the collective, of social cohesion, but also it feeds the opportunity of an inaction, of passivity beyond rational. This is the modern price to pay for our individuality. Not all individuals' desires have a place to be. Neither might they be compatible with the desires of others. And when I look at this, I see the principles of modern democracy being reshaped and questioned by it. This is a game changer. When I try to listen to the past, I see one other side. For decades, modern society, in its democratically defined structure, has been struggling with questions of minorities' rights. These questions start with the discomfort of the individual and may erupt as a factor of aggregation. However, today especially, it strikes me and I remember that the individual cannot be defined by one single factor. Someone that is homosexual does not necessarily need to live his or her life around homosexuality, or what society or gender behavior communities, like gay community, etc., dictates what homosexuality is. Those who care for themselves and for the other individuals will align themselves in front of ideas that concern their own specific interests. It almost sounds like a collective form of selfish behavior. Today, the struggle of individuals and the fact that we are presented with better and faster ways of communication, as well as more freedom, makes it possible to recycle the political game of power. So yes, I see individualism being a game changer. The issue is the following. At what extent is their individual will to feed this game? The lack of structures of guidance can cool the way in which the individual maintains interest in society or the collective. More and more abstention in voting is a good example, meaning that with such diversity of individuals, there is the danger of completely disrupting the social cohesion of a democracy, for the better in some cases, but especially for the worse. I once heard, if you want to preserve your right to democracy, participate, or something along those lines. The point being, the collective needs as much the individual as the individual needs the collective. Are we forgetting this? This makes me wonder, is the eye so overwhelmed by its own way of living that we detached reality, time, and life? Is individualism a form of selfishness within a superhuman passivity? The complexity of daily life is astonishing. It's so crazy, this rush. On this hour of rushing times, it makes me feel displaced, lost, and forgotten, as well as it can reshape the way we connect to others in such a positive manner that the link between two individuals can be established beyond this town. To share my interests, I no longer need to do it with those close to me. Its benefits and dangers expanded to a much larger town. It enhances the way of our individualist form of thinking. It is true, the structures are broken, shattered in fact. No more proscriptions. Thanks to this, it released what was inside of each box, mixing its content. And when this occurs, it is of such power that, for better or worse, individualism affects and puts in motion a new semiotic universe, as well as it can recycle the ideas we thought forgotten or untouchable. The hybridism of life is now possible without rigid boxes. boxes that were replaced by bridges, or in another way of putting it, links. Is it not funny that the world is now made of links? And so yes, it allows the creation of some selfishness, but at the same time it allows those individuals that are not lost to go far. And for those of us who are lost, the endless amount of new opportunities is always waiting to be grabbed. I just have to desire, to want, to love, and to work for it. It sounds tough, but I know we can find a link to which we can grab ourselves to. To see how we work today, it's of great importance to focus on each individual's path and desires. How some of us submit to follow a 8 hours per day technocratic, responsible way of living, just to save enough money to make what fulfills us the most on our free time. Others throwing down constraints of serious matters and following passionately their own dreams, struggling and still preaching they are doing it. Honestly, what appears inside my mind is this question: is working enough to fulfill my dreams? Other matter about work is how the different professions are mixed and linked in order to improve one another, how genders are challenging sex, which roles are being switched, all small pieces of a big part as a result of the link of individual desires, ideas, and aspirations. So it seems that the key to this plot might lay under what makes us so worried about time: the individual, persona, and the other, which plunges us into our second premise: the way we love. Love might be the most complex and amazing example of individualism, and simply putting it, what is love? Is love the same to you as it is to me? But then the question strikes me: how can this be the key to the whole plot that modern individualism brings? Love, something that presumes the existence of the other. How can it be the key to understand this individualistic rush hour? I do not know if I, or someone for that matter, can fully understand or decode individualism. This idea of relativity, freedom and diversity in a world of infinite beings and infinite possibilities extends itself to the point that it is insane to try to collect one absolute answer. Make an effort, I say to myself. And if an effort is to be made in order to understand what is so incredible about the idea of individualism, surely it is that individualism is not being alone. It is not antagonizing the other. The individual of the 21st century is not being asocial or suffering from a lack of social awareness. Even without the presence of rigid structural guidelines, we still have a heritage, a history, and above all, collective-wise, we try to maintain a sense of morality. I feel the responsibility of knowing what came before me, and beside those moments where the loneliness that is in our hearts, in the hearts of the ones that are living in this anxious time, I cannot be an individual without knowing the other, without trying to know where the other is. The effort of understanding individualism is the effort to understand what is both inside me and out. We know that it's possible to lose our humanity. Growing up, I always let my curiosity push me into books, into a search of the past. Growing up with the elders of your family is a privilege that not all of us had. I did. The past was on the shelf, on the questions I could ask and on the answers that those living right by my side could answer. But the industry eras brought us the two biggest wars of our history, where human beings were disposed of their characteristics, transformed into machines, bureaucratic things accepting orders and following commands. This happens through a refusal of our moral rationality within extreme events of violence or absence of human moral within our actions. This made me think that if I had lost the ability of trying to understand the other, my capability of being humane is diminished. I can also say that feelings, as they are defined at the light of this hybrid modern society, either being passion or passionately thoughts, are perverted in this non-humanity, as they are the outreach, the bridge, to be more precise, of the bonds we make together. So it is fair to mention that love, as the key to understand all of this individualism, is not alone. Other feelings are present as a place for communication, as a boundary of what makes us an us. How much touch do we need to feel the other? That other that never stops, that other that constantly moves in this rush hour. The sunrise of modern time, for more distant it might seem, its dates, its actors, its places, left us with some extraordinary gifts. The notion of freedom, the notion of modern democracy, the right of self-identity, and the notion of the quality of being human. These gifts have been following the changes around them. They are not, nor will they ever be static, and there are times I find myself wondering what these questions and concepts mean. For this dusk, not dusk as fall, but as the start of the transition into another day, it is just a flare of time, and these gifts clash inside each one of us, changing their meanings. Let us try to have a glimpse of the past. Few are the individuals that can fully understand the meaning of the fights for freedom that our grandparents did fought. This is simply because few weren't alive to remember it. I could not witness the times of the past. I can think of what they felt, what they thought, but it is a metaphysical realm that I cannot touch. Isn't it too much arrogant to want to live everything? Memories cannot be passed on. The fear, the pain, also impossible to inherit. With all of that, what can you do? Maybe by describing it. Those who lived in the past for us can convey what they felt. But when can we talk about it? And when are we listening? After all, I know I have to run as if the future is getting away from me while I'm trying to listen to the past. The following generations, our fathers, have gained another grounds in the meanings of freedom. They conquered another step on the concepts, rearranging what came before in order to move forward, leaving the emotions of those who just fought a war of unprecedented scale out of the equation. I do not see their actions as irresponsible, but in a way it was not their own experience. It was something that they had not lived through. Every dawn must have its end as much as every night must be replaced by a morning. Certainly not knowing the past or what to do with those gifts of the past is such a high price to pay. It dramatically interferes with the future, that future that we are all so worried about. But who has time for that? I cannot let it fall into oblivion, not just to be complacent with the speed of our present time, as it is one of the ways towards the downfall of my humanity. It is a simple equation to this society of charts and numbers, but sometimes it proves to be so hard. What I know from the past is warning me about this. But what to do with those whom cannot connect with the past? Heritage is there, right by their side, and sometimes time runs so fast that it is only until late time that we fully understand the importance of what came behind. And so these factors no longer impose themselves. They are here as a part of the landscape, which we pass by, and it is the choice of the individual to embrace them or not. Oh, but all of this is to say that we are focusing on the 21st century, where you should be free to listen to whom you want. This pushes forward the idea that we are responsible, that the I, on its own life dissertation, matters now more than ever, because time flees in front of us, and each one of us has to grab it for ourselves. It is a recycled notion from history itself, since the course of history is learning and improving. Once again we are reminded of our position in the world, and it seems that this time we are truly naked to our conscience. No holy ground to set as goals or rules. That is also achieved through individual choice. It is preceded by the growth of the individual. Which path to follow, which faith to devote yourself to. But this presents itself with a duality. The influences that the individual is confronted with are not to be forgotten or taken as guaranteed. Also, these parameters are no longer a limitative factor. It is the relativity of being a human being. There are always some predispositions that are created by minor or major influences during our growth. I remember, my memories, the taste of food, the first kiss, the first challenge, and the first victory, the overcome of fear. It's all so unique, so mine. It highlights, however, some clashes that sometimes it is better to avoid. How to deal with the different needs of those growing as individuals, the situations we live, the moments of our passing by. Who knows how to live, how to enjoy and how to love, to touch or to feel, to let go? Should we not be equal to rights and life, the predicaments of a democracy? The discovery of sexuality, academic knowledge, artistic and technical expertise, it is so much of what can make a difference. However, we ought to remember that no individual should be more important than another. Our history has shown us that. Bearing this in mind, it can be so dangerous to allow ourselves to freely choose our paths, and it can be such an enormous positive thing. Love, smile, cry, fall, pick yourself up, continue to live, and choose. Is there any other way? When at an unconscious level, the choices we make are made in a matter of affinity, of what we like the most, of what we love. Rationality cannot work without a good measure of feelings. It might not be visible within the path itself. It might only be visible later on when objectives are achieved or even failed. But emotions, love in particular, are a part of the 21st century process of dealing with time. It is so curious to watch the way we rush into love as younglings, and how devotion and dedication created by love stay echoing in eternity. Do you remember Grandpa and Grandma, how they lived for each other? Or my friend John, I would trust him with my life. These are memories which not even time can change. There is, however, a particularity in this world of individualism. We acknowledge that every human being has emotions, and what these feelings mean in terms of words. We had to find a way to understand each other. What we cannot do is to translate the inner content of our emotions, because they are as unique as they can be, relating only to the individual. So love and other emotions are bidimensional. On the one side universal, on the other unique. We all love, but we do it in our own way. Indeed, it is that kind of love, the one wrapped in desire, passion, pleasure, and pain. The ambiguous feeling hardly described by a word, that has the unique quality of one finding meaning on the inside of the other. Love appears as meaning and as actions. It is that touch on the other's skin, that breath in each other, the unique look, the desire for you. These things make this love possible to appear as the disposal of individualism. I am yours. I love you. These are words capable of displacing the axis of time itself, much more the individualism. This love assumes a uniqueness in knowing this town of ours, It is individual, unique, and tremendous, but concerns us all as we are all seekers of love and being loved. It seems so hard to find this kind of love as an establisher of something, but it is a statement of belonging or not belonging, being or not being, or even being in between. It is common to find ourselves in between emotions, since we are living in an era of rushing and running, of many ephemeral ideas, of somehow disoriented thoughts and new memories. The path of the universality of our emotions finds a common place in the world. We all love, we all hate, and when engaged by this common factor, we might stay bounded to the other by what is our in emotional understanding. This is the one way to keep our humanity in check, and that it is the love I mention. People in our lives are passing through just like time, and we only completely engage those who emotionally represent our notions of specific feelings. I think this is the best I can describe how we love, or how the complex just love is responsible to understand some place. Love as a statement of sharing ourselves.
Hi, I'm sorry, I wouldn't call or leave a message for this, but I really need to talk. And do you remember that quote that I told you about the other day? I also thought a lot about it, and it is, I don't know, I thought about myself, others, and the places I've been. The bonds I made really are what make me go further. With you, it was a stronger bond. In you, I found my strongest bond. It is through you and with you that I discover what's new and happening in the times to come. Scenes are constantly changing, but the I in me will always call for you. You that help me defining what I am. Today, the third part of the quote really touched me. How we die, right? It's very hard to face it. What really is dead nowadays? Yeah, I'm sure it's a question to each person can only find answers for themselves. I still remember that moment, that night. You were naked, lying next to me, free but vulnerable. It was just us, no attachments, no barriers. Us and our conscience. I am trying to find again that state of mind. And after today, thinking about death, I suddenly felt it. Dying is a necessity, but we forgot it. And as a result, death lost all its meaning. I have seen it. I didn't tell you yet, but my grandma passed away. But you know what? That is a very intimate concept. Nothing is really simple after what I saw her go through. But that can only be described as a process. Lately I have seen her going away without return, hour by hour. I saw my grandma reaching her 90s, but what was the cost? She wasn't her, not completely. We can try to cure everything, to surpass many things, but our souls, our core, it is unreachable. It really ended up being a long goodbye, and that is so painful. If our soul is the core, yeah, memories are what holds it together, what keep it unique. I saw it. Losing memories is so painful. It is the unavoidable loss of individuality, but not as if we melt. as if we melt into a mass, because the loss is not to the others, it is to time itself, I think. Memories are our most prized conquests. We keep them far deep inside of us, and we will never be able to give them to others. Only to time, but it's because our fragility reaches its top and we can't hold it anymore. It's unfair and so devastating, this last step of our humane entropy. Only a process is like this. It starts with the changes in character into something like an untuned melody. It's really a place of transition. Life, I mean. Everything is unstoppably moving. We pass through life that is passing, or better, running through us. And while we run with it, there's freedom for those with enough strength, and that's the key point. Enough strength to drive their own path. It's all a question of choosing and responsibility. However, in the last journey of all, the choice doesn't belong to us. As much as we don't decide to be born, we don't choose this. What a journey it is. We face ourselves at the end, alone. Just a raindrop evaporating, powerless, decaying. I want to fight back against his fragile existence. But I remember my grandma, she always said to not be sad when she passed. She knew that death was a requirement of the gift of being alive. I just say to not let us keep breathing into immortality, just simply to let me desire from a life an immortal memory of my own path. As Camus said, how we die is one of the steps to understanding a place, but I ask myself if it's not more interesting if it was, how should we die? I saw it in her eyes, in one of those lucid moments, We don't take for ourselves the eternal rising to a stage of uniqueness, but instead we just desire not to be far from known places when our body is there, where we no longer recognize familiar faces and being on the constant presence of names we used to call, but now we cannot even name it or remember. I am pretty sure that if my grandma was here, she will ask to time to let her sit down somewhere in this great town and just let her remember the bounds she gained, enjoying the flavor of the wisdom of no longer expecting in a rush the future yet to unveil, and proudly knowing that being there because she acts freely by her own choice. Sorry, it has been a long message, but I needed to talk. I'm pretty sure that my grandma, she really knew this place, this town. In the end, I'm sure that the young desires, the dreams, and the goals we set are only reborn to be memories, revealing the true statement of knowing something. It is in each one of us. I was, I am, and tomorrow you will be. I'll call you in the morning. I love you.